Endowed with the power of life through human form, I am charged with the task of making sure my sisters and brothers are warned that there must be room for new life. New forms of existence and new heights consider the breaking of the seed and its desire to be ripe in order to start all over again. In order to start all over again, I've taken to paper and pen in hopes that you will hear me, in hopes that you will see me, in hopes that you will remember. May we remember to hear the stories of women who are silenced and not voiceless. May we be courageous. May we be courageous enough to hear ghetto children's voices who know survival as a creative act found on the rhythms beaten into desks and walls and overcrowded classrooms on the South Side, or in the ink that covers their wounded bodies, who know the price of war and poverty every day of their lives. May we remember that their life is shaped by how much their life is valued or systemically thrown away. And they inherit and manifest every single memory born of women of color today who are deemed too poor and savage to behave as mothers. May we remember the women of color who have had their children removed from their care by state forces because they could not afford divorces from their abusers, users, 501c3s, and government entities who will write their stories for your consumption. They will count their heads and write their poverty porn stories for your consumption. May we remember the queer women of color who are struggling to build healthy families and communities without access to basic liberties like walking outside without the threat of being left to die in the back of a convenience store in Houston, Texas. May we remember the women of the global South who put trembling hand to weeping mouth when they found that their children had been kidnapped, sold by European and American adoption agencies. May we never forget the long-standing history and present-day reality of women of color being sterilized without their consent in the clinics, prisons, and colonies of this so-called land of the free. May we remember the children who have confused their desire to have child with their desire to have love their families cannot afford to give them 4 generations over due to mass incarceration, economic displacement, gentrification, slavery, and systemic poverty. And we remember that we are both the villains and the heroes of these reproductive tragedies. And we work hard to see our reflections in those who have been deeply wounded by our violent fantasies of excess and economic freedom. Intentional of telling stories that complicate and humanize instead of simplify and victimize, no matter how much courage it takes. In the words of Sister Aja Monet, may we be courageous, may we be courageous, may we be courageous. I remember the day I learned that my mother and my mother's mother made 20 cents an hour in their lifetime. It was the same day I realized the descendants of those who survived the worst genocide known to humankind were still expected to be slaves. Slaves in a culture that would force them to live off of 20 cents an hour, that's $1 a day, only to be called illegal aliens and made to clean the houses of human women who are privileged enough to ask for equal pay. I remember the first time I attempted to commit suicide. I was 8, trying to find a place to exist between my mother's tired tears and blue-eyed American hate. It was before I learned my net worth might increase if I straightened my hair, kept silent, and barely ate. 10 years later, I wonder. My brown body was already priced when capitalists decided that my wild, savage life was less profitable than the land they would never come to really know. Or if my children will recognize their grandmother's indigenous faces and appropriated patterns found on white people's clothes, I wonder. In 7 generations, we will continue to have to sell the remaining pieces of our wounded souls to be guaranteed another day. If my children's children will continue to be taught that their native traditions are primitive, but somehow buying back their clothes from corporations like Forever 21 is somehow okay. I wonder if Euro-Americans will continue to have access to our ancient cultures, temples, and lands without connecting them to the displaced and exploited brown hands in their kitchens. I wonder if in 7 generations, my descendants will look down at their brown skin and into their ancient eyes and remember they are children of Maya, Aztec, and Inca, Gavo, Lenca, and Choctaw, Tioga, Pueblo, Huichol, y Quechua, children of Turtle Island, America, descendants of those who turned the earth and sowed the seeds, honored the water and protected the trees, born from the breath of healers and dreams, children of spiritual warriors who fought for life to be free. I wonder if their life will continue to be valued by numbers and their bodies enchained and enslaved and sold by the millions in the name of liberal progression and freedom. Being equal to their competitors in this capitalist nihilistic game will only force them to be just as vain and forget to look at the vast horizon, the sun and the sky and the beauty that lies in the wombs of their grandmother's memories. I was told once that my poems could be prayers. And my prayers could be poems, and I wondered, how shall I proceed? Shall I put my hands together and bow my head before I refer to God and beg that He transform into a reflection of me? Knowing that most days I pray simply to figure out a way to breathe, to see a little bit more light in my gray, a little less rain in my day, a little more weight in my say when I choose to acknowledge I have run out of answers. Too tired to search and too scared to trust. But maybe, bear with me, but maybe if He were not a lord or a king, but a survivor of rape. Maybe if He were a she and she bled once a month up on that cross, I would feel a little bit more safe. And if her wrists were cut by the broken mirrors of her own humanity, I might feel okay because I would be assured that the great divine understood my pain. Maybe if she were branded too, covered in tattoos, maybe if she had ink on her dark skin that reflected the violence she was born in and served as roadmaps and hieroglyphs to her truth. If she was short and thick with her shoulders hunched over and her tailbone tucked in order to detour attention, in order to avoid a mention that she was sex and that breasts and thighs were to be offered at their best, forced taught the art of dressed in breasts because the goal here was survival. Maybe if she woke up wondering if it were miracle or will that kept her from sitting still and helped her survive a cross that felt irreconcilable. Maybe then she could teach me how to live life a little less scary. So I could look into a stranger's eyes without the weight of 1 in 3 being raped every 15 seconds on my shoulders, without the fear of my younger sisters getting older and being given that strong woman cross when brother, father, cousin decide to show them how to take their clothes off, and mothers who don't know how to be mothers are too busy trying not to fall into the mercy of others who insist she is not a part of the 3 that is supposed to make you believe that there is hope. Maybe God will be merciful enough to transform into infinite Mary so that I can cope. I can understand the systemic murder of my spirit as an inspiration to keep writing. That would be dope. Because I have to believe that poems can be prayers, and prayers can be poems, and maybe, just maybe, if you clap loud enough at the end of this war song, we believe we can speak into existence our own psalms, because I have to believe we can speak into existence our own psalms, and somehow I can identify, translate, and correct the wrongs that I feel nail me to your cross. What if we have it all wrong? What if God were trying to teach us how to erase this idea of perfection? Maybe God is just reflections. Maybe then my brothers might stop bleeding and my sisters might stop eating, and maybe we could all understand that God is just the courage for seeing that our complex stories are divine. That my words and pain are not just mine, but del pueblo, of the people. Maybe then I will understand when they say God's people say, amen. And the church says, amen. Let it be. But how long will we continue to not see that we have some things to figure out before we are all truly free? So brothers and sisters, and all those in between, I sincerely hope that you can hear me.